Hello everyone, hope you guys are all having a wonderful day, and today we are going to have a relatively long video. So what I'm doing here is I wanted to make a space shuttle, but I wanted to make it in the style of the dynamic soaring vehicle, or dinosaur to be short. And if none of you have heard of this, which you've heard of it if you've watched my channel before, but this was basically a concept where they took a space plane, much like the X-15, and slapped it on top of a Titan ballistic missile. And I don't know why, I just really love the general feel of the design having the plane on top. I actually made a model rocket of it a while back and it didn't go so well. But here you can see the final craft, and I have 4 F1 engines and 4 RS-25 engines in the first stage. Those RS-25 engines there are providing some extra control because there's an area where there's not enough fuel in the first stage, but there's enough air that would flip us if we did not have those RS-25 engines. So now the second stage has gone, the first stage has separated, and we have 4 RS-25 engines and 4 of the small vernier thrusters. We didn't need those small vernier thrusters, but I decided to add them anyway. And now you can see we have separated from the second stage, and we have that skipper engine with the extra fuel. That gives us about 1,500 meters per second of delta V to do any orbital adjustments and our deorbit burn. This craft, I would say, has an excessive amount of delta V. If I were to redesign it, I would add another notch to that payload bay, because that does give us a bit of limitations. So we are just getting ready now to deorbit. And I did have some problems the first time I flew this. I clipped some RTGs inside the crew cabin, which caused them to explode during re-entry, so I did have to put them in the payload bay later. So we use this drain valve to drain any excess fuel we might have. And now, what I'm going to do now, since we're going to overshoot the runway, is I just pull up and make the spacecraft flail uncontrollably to burn off any excess speed we have. Now, this landing you're about to see, I had only landed a spacecraft from space 3 times up to this point. So this was my 4th time landing a shuttle. So that's my excuse for what happened next. So we are cutting off as much speed as possible. We lose about half the runway doing that. I am being really paranoid trying to make sure we land on the runway, and I turn while we land. And when that turned, I flipped it. But nothing exploded. And in Kerbal Space Program, if nothing explodes, that's a success. So we got little Valentina out here just to see what's going on, and we are going to launch the next one. So this is containing the first part of our new space station. And we are going to power through the lower atmosphere with that first stage before detaching it now. And we have that second stage, really is going to do the majority of getting us into orbit. Now, what I want to do with the space station is I'm going to be adding a ISS style configuration. It's not going to be completely accurate. There's not going to be any truss. It's going to be a central hub that's going to have all the connector ports, so we can dock them all together. So this is the first section of the station we have right here. We have the MK2 crew module, which is supposed to be used for landing, but I'm going to be using it as the control point of the station. We have a cupola module for viewing Earth, and then we have a, what is it called? The PPD-10 hitchhiker storage container, which can contain 4 Kerbals. And once that's done, we are going to give Valentina on an EVA. And this is how we at DST Studios get rid of orbital debris. The Kerbal way. So now we are just going to put Valentina back on the shuttle and start preparing for our deorbit burn. Not before we deploy all the solar panels on this, rename it, and again get that Kerbal back, which has a pretty long trek to get back to the shuttle. We did kind of use the RCS ports a bit much, and now it's already getting close to out of physics range. So now we are going to deorbit this, and what I'm going to try to do is get at the desert landing site. which in my mind is the Kerbal's version of Edwards Air Force Base, which in real life is in California. The shuttle did land there a couple times. I believe it landed there on the first, second, and fourth space shuttle missions. But anyway, going past that, we are about to land at the runway. Just gonna try to get it aligned perfectly, which is probably the hardest part for me, at least, is just trying to make sure we're aligned. And now I'm just trying to burn off as much speed as possible at exactly the wrong place, and we are good, and we have brakes, and we have landed successfully. I should probably add a parachute to that in hindsight. Okay, so we have the third mission for the space station, and I forgot to close the payload bay, but we can do that in flight. So we are about to pass 20 kilometers, and we have staging, and I did lose control a bit there, but ultimately it was fine, and we didn't lose much of our velocity. Those vector engines really did help with that, though, because they have a massive gimbaling range. So what was nice here was I basically got aligned with the space station almost perfectly, and we were able to get our rendezvous very soon, like almost an orbit away. We were able to get within like a couple kilometers of it, which is always nice. And so I'm going to warp there, and once we are there, we are traveling at about 60 meters per second and just burn retrograde, and then we are going to burn to the target, and once we get close enough we will, and I overshot that. Okay, so we are just going to detach the station module and go to it and couple it to the main like command portion of the station. The module I have right here is the coupling module. This will where I dock all the other station modules. So we are going to use these monopropellant thrusters to, again, burn prograde. Then we are just going to drift there until we get close enough, in which we are going to flip around, or we are going to hit N and decelerate, and just try not to screw this up. And I came in a bit too hot, and I'm now trying to use those thrusters to just try to get aligned as well as we can. Then I will just burn prograde again, and then we will hopefully be docked if I can get this thing working. Come on. I set the docking acquire force to 200, which should allow us to get on there faster, and those magnets, come on, there we go. So we have that truss portion connected, and all we need to do is detach this probe and deorbit it. But before that, let's get this shuttle away so we can do our deorbit burn. And unfortunately, we were not able to catch the deorbit burn because we had a power outage and my screen capture software died. But I did film the landing, in which it went kind of rough. It reminded me that in hindsight, I really should have added a parachute so we could decelerate faster. And I slammed against the runway there, forgetting the rule that you want the lowest vertical velocity as possible. And we just squeaked to a stop and didn't run over the end of the runway. 2 kilometers of runway, and I waited to the very end. So we have what is this, the fifth? No, this is the fourth launch. And what we have in here is the propulsion module, which will allow us to maneuver the spacecraft in orbit and eventually deorbit it if either we need to replace it or something goes terribly wrong. Now, the actual International Space Station is planned to be deorbited in around 2027 to 2028, which is kind of a sad moment because besides the Apollo-Soyuz test project, it was the first real example of international cooperation. It is going to deorbit and be landed, or sorry, well, more burned up over the Indian Ocean, and I believe any remnants are going to probably fall around Point Nemo, which is the area where there is the farthest land from anywhere. A couple satellites and I believe Mir space station were deorbited there, which is kind of sad because originally the plan was to have the space shuttle take pieces of the station down to be used in museums. But now that's going to be impossible because either most of the pieces are just going to become heated plasma or burnt up debris, which, I mean, it's possible that some of it could be recognizable and recovered, but the only way I could see that is if you put a couple kilometer wide net a couple dozen feet below the ocean surface and had any debris get caught in that, but then you're already pushing it. Well, somebody could probably do that. I believe Elon Musk recovered some of the F1 engines from the original Apollo 11 mission, so I guess it is feasible to get some debris from the ISS and put it in a museum, which would be absolutely amazing if somebody could do. But of course, if you tried to do that, you run the risk of having a 1 million pound space station. Even if only 1% of that actually reaches the surface, you can have some big chunks of debris that are gonna hit the surface. So you always run the risk of, if you're on a boat filming it, for example, of it crashing into you or something like that. But skipping past that rant, we are getting very close to the station. We have it about 1,000 meters away, and we are gonna burn retrograde so we come into contact with it. And we are going to detach the propulsion module and add any excess fuel that was accidentally transferred from it to the engine. I forgot to disable crossfeed on that decoupler. And we are now going to detach that and deploy the solar panels. And we have very little monopropellant with us, so we have to make the most of it. We are going to again point target towards the space station, burn towards it, then back again. And once we have that coupled, all we have to do is add the scientific instruments and the solar panel trusses, if I can get this lined up correctly. So just get it to point target, and we are docked. So now we are going to go on a little EVA and go back to the space shuttle. And I'm just going to skip forward in time a bit to our re-entry. We are coming in pretty hot. We got that nice mod of re-entry particle effects. I would highly suggest for everyone to download it. It is a great mod. Well, besides when you're ascending through the atmosphere. For example, some of my crafts that have a good thrust to weight ratio, when they're ascending through the atmosphere, that effect will come up, and it's a little annoying. But now you guys are about to see a failed compilation. See, I came in too vertical, so when I tried to pull up, I'd either miss the runway or smash into it. So this one, for example, I tried to do a loop and go back. I didn't have enough fuel, and boom. The next one, I came in too low, and the entire back half was destroyed. This one, wings were too weak, thing explodes. And this one was the only successful landing attempt. The wing actually, as you can see, bent, but even though it was successful, it still was in this awkward spot where it didn't flip. I just had to retract the landing gear and extend them again, and it was fine. And nothing exploded, so again, successful. So we have the, what is this, sixth long? I don't know anymore. This video is getting way too long. So we have the seventh launch of the space station, and we have staging there, and we are going to again just a normal ascent powering through. And the nice thing about this craft, I'd like to mention, is I'll try to put the link to it in the description below, but I'm not sure. I probably won't get to it. But the nice thing about this is a lot more maneuverable than an actual space shuttle recreation. I've made loads of space shuttle recreations, but this one is the easiest to fly, even though it's technically not a proper US-style space shuttle. This thing is much, much more flyable than any other iteration I have. So, going back to what's going on screen, we are going to detach the hitchhiker storage module and dock it to the station. And the problem with the hitchhiker was that I did not add any RCS ports. Or I at least forgot to use them. So here I'm basically using the space station to dock with the module, which is basically the opposite thing you actually want to do. So now we are going to close the payload bays and get ready for a re-entry burn, which I was just in time to do. But I decided not to do that because I did not have enough fuel after the maneuvers. So I decided to prepare for the burn this time. Actually, I probably could have done it originally, but moving on. They get another day in space, bonus. So we just do our deorbit burn and do another very steep, unwise re-entry. And this one, I was actually going to undershoot it, but with some puffs from that skiff engine, I was able to get far enough, actually a bit too far, and I had to bend down not to immediately overshoot the runway. So now we are again over the thing, which I should have learned from my lesson last time. So we are going to do the classic pitch up at the last possible second, burning up as much speed as possible and sticking the landing, which I will hopefully do. And we are good. Just turn to the side and get the thumbnail shot. And next. So this is the 8th launch, I believe. I've lost track by now. And what we are going to be adding here is the science module, which, of course, is the main concern on a space station. Honestly, space stations in KSP are basically useless. If you want to get the full check tree, really, you could do it with probes if you felt like you wanted to. Matt Lown actually does a amazing tutorial on how to get the tech tree in science mode. And here we have a shot. You can see the space station, the square where it is, pop up on the, what's it called, the screen. This video is way too long. But anyway, we are going to be burning out the first stage in a second, once we have tilted enough. And we are lost control a bit again, but I was able to pick myself up and not die. We did lose a lot of delta V with that, though. We lost like 300 meters per second, and the fuel we spent was also another maybe 400 meters per second we lost. But we still had enough to get into orbit and do a highly inefficient encounter burn, which puts us on a ellipse practically high enough. Now looking at it again, that could that's about a geostationary orbit right there, or I guess a Kerban synchronous orbit. It's an orbit where it orbits for the length of the day. But we are gonna exhaust the second stage, to get a rendezvous, and we can see it coming into the physics range right there. And just another typical rendezvous to get as close as possible. And we are going to open the payload bay doors and detach the science module. I activate the reaction control system and get it docked with that station. now that we are about to get the space station docked, we are going to decouple that RCS fuel container, get a Kerbal on EVA, and do probably the dumbest thing you could do in a spacewalk. We are going to smash the Kerbal to get it out of the way. Ooh, that did not look good, speed up. And we are going to, again, get rid of space debris the correct way. We are going to go back to the shuttle and check if there is any parts damage, which earlier I did not see any parts damage. Just grab on board and close the payload bays, and then we are actually getting close to the center right now. So we are going to, again, burn retrograde, and I'm getting tired of explaining this. But moving on, we are going at a fairly steep re-entry. I would not, unless this was a Mercury or Gemini capsule, this is probably the worst type of re-entry you could go on, because that was at least 45 degrees. And we are going to do the smart move of always pitching up at the last possible moment, which everyone knows is, as I've said before, the best way to land a plane. And we are just gonna try not to crash and explode this time. And we're gonna try to get rid of as much vertical velocity as possible. Then I pitched down and threw that all in the trash. And we again flipped over. I think I should have made the thing longer, but it's too late now. The video when you're watching this is probably a couple days after I filmed this. So now we are going to launch the, what is this, 9th mission to get up there. And this, I'm gonna be trying to do something with the, different with the camera. I'm gonna try to do like a rocket cam setup with this. So what we're gonna do is basically mimic a camera mounted on the outside of a rocket. And so, as you can see here, we are just powering through the lower atmosphere with that first stage, which is frankly overpowered with the, I believe it's because each of the engines there has about 1,000 kilonewtons of thrust, plus the extra 300 from the F1 engine, so we have 4,000 kilonewtons with just the vector engines, and then we have 4,000 with the F1s, plus another 300, which is 3, 6, 9, 12. So we have 5,200 with just the F1s, then another 4,000 with the vectors, which is about 9,200, which is now in hindsight a bit more than enough. We probably could have gotten away with just 4 of the RS-25 engines there. Now this launch right here is actually the final launch of this video, which, yeah, I know, it's a relief, right? Or at least one for me. So in this payload contains basically all of the science modules. We even have one of the Tarsier space telescopes from that mod, which again, I love. That is one of my favorite mods, along with re-entry particle effects. But so what we are going to do here is the standard rendezvous and fix our camera so we're not in that rocket cam configuration. And we are going to wait to burn to that maneuver. And you know what, I think I'm gonna cut it out in post, So here we go, we have a pretty close encounter. I'm gonna separate that second stage so we can properly rendezvous with the space station. And so all we have to do now is wait till we get to our encounter. There we go, we're about 1 kilometer away. We are going to burn retrograde as per usual, and then just point to target, and then burn retrograde again towards target, although we almost did crash into it there, which I'm very happy we didn't, but it was a close call. And so what we're going to do now is we are going to detach the science module and dock it to the space station. So once we have that under control, and a second, there we go, we are just going to maneuver it outside of the payload bay, and then we are going to burn towards the spacecraft and connect it to the science module that I put a decoupler onto. And on the science experiment module, we have every scientific instrument in the game except the atmosphere detector, which is of course useless in space. Well, there is an atmosphere, just very, very small. And the seismometer, which is also very useless in space. And here we have this Earth observation satellite that is mounted to the station. But now, since the last part of the station is on, we are going to do a final deorbit burn for this video. Point the shuttle program, turn on the light settings up so you can see this, which, by the way, the YouTube compression algorithm, any dark video just naturally gets darker with it. And we are going to point the shuttle up at the last possible second, burning off as much speed as possible, and landing it. Hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.